I fucked up. Big time. And now? Now I have to tell you how it all went to hell. It was supposed to be a normal night. I came home late from work, threw my keys on the table, kicked off my shoes. But the second I stepped into the bedroom, I knew something was off. The air was heavy, thick with something unspoken. Lisa was sitting on the edge of the bed, my phone clutched in her hand. Her knuckles were white, her lips pressed so tightly together they were just a thin, pale line. She wasn't crying, which was somehow worse. Explain this. Right now. I froze. My brain scrambled for excuses before I even knew what she had found. What are you talking about? I asked, forcing a laugh that sounded fake as hell. She turned the screen toward me. And just like that, my stomach hit the fucking floor. It was the texts. The ones I should have deleted. The ones I should have never sent in the first place. I love you. I miss you. I can't stop thinking about that night. I couldn't breathe. My chest was caving in, my hands felt like ice. My mind screamed at me to say something, anything, but my mouth just hung open like a dumbass. Lisa stared at me, waiting, and when I didn't speak, her voice dropped to a whisper. You told me she was your sister. I wish I could tell you I had some genius explanation, some perfectly crafted lie that got me out of this. But the truth? The truth was, I had nothing. Because Lisa wasn't stupid. And the second she read those messages, she knew. Emily wasn't my sister. And now, she wasn't just my secret. She was my biggest fucking mistake. My heart hammered against my ribs as Lisa's expression shifted from fury to something colder. Disgust. Betrayal. I'd seen that look before, but never directed at me. How long? She finally asked, voice tight. How long? I swallowed hard. Lying wouldn't save me now. A year. She let out a sharp breath, almost a laugh, but there was nothing funny about it. A year? Jesus Christ, Jake. And I was just the idiot girlfriend who never caught on. It wasn't like that, I said quickly. I swear You swear. Her voice cracked, and for the first time, her eyes shone with tears. You fucking swear? Jake, you lied to my face every single day. You. She cut herself off, shaking her head. God. I bet all our friends knew, didn't they? Fucking humiliating. I wanted to tell her no, that no one else knew, but the truth was, I wasn't even sure. Maybe they'd suspected. Maybe I was just too blind to see it. Lisa stood up, tossing my phone onto the bed like it burned her. I can't do this. I can't even look at you. Please. I whispered, but she was already walking toward the door. I should have stopped her. I should have said something, done something. But all I did was stand there and watch as she walked away, out of our bedroom, out of my life. And all I could think was, I did this. I ruined everything. You ever make a mistake so big that it doesn't just follow you, it haunts you? Yeah, that's where this all started. 1 year earlier. I met Emily when I was 20. It was one of those fast, stupid, reckless things that burn too hot and leave nothing but ashes. We were obsessed with each other in that toxic way where you don't know if you're in love or at war. And when it finally crashed and burned, I swore I'd never let her back into my life. But life has a sick sense of humor. I was at a coffee shop downtown when I saw her again. I hadn't seen her in years, but the second our eyes met, it was like no time had passed. She smiled, and just like that, I was done for. Jake, she said, her voice the same mix of soft and sharp that had always driven me insane. Didn't think I'd ever see you again. Yeah, well, here I am. I tried to sound casual, but my pulse was hammering in my ears. She looked me over, smirking. You look good. So do you. The worst part? I meant it. We sat down. We talked. And it was too easy, like slipping back into an old addiction. She told me she was in town for a while, asked if I wanted to catch up. Every rational part of me screamed no, but my mouth had a different idea. Sure. That night, I told myself it was nothing, just a friendly meet-up. But when she texted me the next day, I answered. And the next day, and the next. Soon, it wasn't just texts. It was late-night calls, secret meetups, old feelings clawing their way back to the surface. I kept telling myself it didn't mean anything, that I was in control, that I wasn't making the worst mistake of my life. Then one night, she asked me a question that changed everything. Jake, does she know about me? I hesitated. And that was enough. Didn't think so, she said, her voice dripping with something between amusement and triumph. So what are we going to do about that? And just like that, the lie was born. She's my sister, I said. I don't know why those words came out. Maybe I thought it would make things easier. Maybe I thought it would keep everything under control. Turns out, I was dead fucking wrong. For a while, the lie worked. Lisa never questioned it. Emily played her part well. And I convinced myself that everything was under control, that I could have both. But the past has a way of creeping back in when you least expect it. It started small. Emily would text me late at night. Little things at first. Old jokes, random memories, inside things only she and I would get. I'd tell myself it didn't mean anything, that I could ignore it. But I never did. Then came the meetings. At first, they were accidental. Or at least, that's what I told myself. She'd show up at places she knew I'd be. Coffee shops, the gym, even a bar where Lisa and I sometimes went. One night, I stayed out late, telling Lisa I was catching up with an old friend. Technically, that wasn't a lie. Emily was an old friend. She was also the worst decision I had ever made. We sat in my car, parked in an empty lot. The streetlights buzzed dimly above us. Rain drizzled down the windshield, blurring the outside world. "You ever think about us?" Emily asked, her voice quiet but sharp. I let out a humorless laugh. "I think about a lot of things. But you never stopped thinking about me, did you?" She turned to face me, her eyes burning into mine. "Be honest." I should have lied. I should have said no, should have told her that she was my past, and nothing more. But instead, I sat there, silent, and silence was an answer in itself. She leaned in closer. "You don't belong with her, Jake." "That's not true." "Then why are you here?" I didn't have an answer for that. Or maybe I did, but I wasn't ready to admit it yet. Her fingers grazed my arm. And just like that, I was drowning in memories. The way she smelled, the way she laughed, the way she could make me forget everything else in the world. It was intoxicating. It was dangerous. "You're playing with fire," I muttered, shaking my head. Emily smirked. "You always liked the heat." That night, I drove home feeling like I had just walked a razor's edge. I hadn't crossed the line yet, but I was standing so close to it. I could see the drop on the other side. And deep down, I think I already knew I wasn't going to stop myself from falling. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emily, her smirk, her touch, the way she said my name like it still belonged to her. My mind was a fucking mess, and by the time morning came, I felt like a train wreck waiting to happen. And then Lisa found the messages. I was in the kitchen, making coffee, trying to shake off the weight in my chest, when I heard her voice from the bedroom. "Jake? What the hell is this?" My stomach dropped. I turned, my body moving in slow motion, and walked toward the bedroom, already knowing what I was about to see. She stood there, my phone in her hand, screen glowing like a goddamn spotlight. Her hands were shaking. "Don't. Just don't." Her voice cracked, and that was somehow worse than if she'd screamed. "Tell me this isn't what it looks like. Tell me I'm wrong." I opened my mouth, but the words wouldn't come. Because she wasn't wrong. She was never wrong. "You told me she was your sister." Lisa let out a sharp, breathless laugh. "I actually believed you. God, I'm such an idiot. It's not what you think." "Bullshit." Her voice exploded, raw and broken. "Don't you fucking dare stand there and lie to my face again." I stepped forward. She stepped back. That hit harder than any slap could have. "Lisa, please." "How long?" she demanded. "How long have you been sneaking around with her?" Silence. That was my answer. She exhaled shakily, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I can't believe this. I trusted you, Jake. I loved you. And this whole time, you were lying to me." I wanted to tell her it didn't mean anything, that it was a mistake, that I never meant to hurt her. But every excuse sounded like dust in my mouth. "I need you to leave," she said quietly. "Get out." The force of her scream nearly knocked the breath out of me. And just like that, I knew I had lost her. I grabbed my keys, my phone, my shame, and I walked out the door, knowing there was no coming back from this. The worst part? I deserved every second of it. I sat in my car outside a shitty motel on the edge of town, staring at my phone. My hands were shaking. Lisa hadn't texted, hadn't called. I couldn't blame her. I deserved this. I thought about going back, about falling to my knees and begging her to forgive me. But what was the point? I had already shattered everything. Instead, I did the only thing I knew how to do. I made another mistake. I called Emily. She picked up after 2 rings. "Took you long enough." "I fucked up," I said, my voice hollow. "Yeah," she sighed. "You did." Silence stretched between us. I could hear the sound of a TV in the background, the soft hum of traffic. She wasn't surprised. She wasn't even angry. "You're at the motel, aren't you?" she finally asked. Yeah, I'll be there in 15. I should have told her no. I should have ended it there. But I didn't. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, waiting. 15 minutes later, Emily slid into the passenger seat, her perfume wrapping around me like a noose. So, she kicked you out? She asked, glancing at my overnight bag in the back seat. I nodded. She smirked, shaking her head. I told you this would happen. Yeah, well, congratulations. You were right. I usually am. She reached out, her fingers grazing my arm, her touch as familiar as it was dangerous. I should have pulled away. I didn't. What now? She whispered. That was the question, wasn't it? What now? I had lost Lisa. I had nothing left. Nothing except Emily. And that night, I let her pull me under all over again. But here's the part one haven't told you yet. It wasn't the first time I had caved. That night wasn't just some tragic mistake. It wasn't some last-minute surrender to temptation. No, it was something much worse. It was inevitable. The first time Emily and I crossed the line, it was months ago. Lisa was out of town visiting her parents. Emily and I had been texting, just friendly, casual messages, or so I told myself. And then one night, she showed up at my apartment uninvited. We were just going to talk. That's what I kept telling myself as she sat on my couch. Too close, her perfume making my head spin. One drink turned into two, then three. By the time I kissed her, I had already lost. The next morning, I told myself it was a mistake, that it wouldn't happen again. But Emily knew better. She always knew better. And so did Lisa when she found the texts. I never thought it would end like this. Lisa stood in the middle of the apartment, her arms crossed over her chest, her face unreadable. She wasn't crying. She wasn't yelling. She just looked done. One last chance, Jake, she said, her voice eerily calm. Tell me the truth. All of it. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. She sighed, shaking her head. You can't, can you? Lisa. No, don't. Don't say my name like that. Like I'm supposed to just forget everything. Like I'm supposed to believe another lie. I felt sick. She deserved the truth. But saying it out loud would make it real. It would make me the villain, and some stupid, selfish part of me still wanted to believe I wasn't. She took a deep breath. How long has it been going on? I hesitated, and that hesitation was all she needed. Jesus Christ, Jake. Her voice cracked, the first sign of emotion she had shown all night. A year? More? God, I was so fucking blind. It wasn't like that, I said, stepping toward her. She took a step back. That hit harder than a slap. Then what was it like? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you cheated on me with the same girl you swore was your sister. I had nothing. No excuse. No explanation that would make this okay. I need to know one thing, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Did you ever love me? I felt like the air had been punched from my lungs. Of course I did. I still do. She let out a hollow laugh. Love? This isn't love, Jake. Love doesn't lie. Love doesn't sneak around behind someone's back for months, pretending everything's fine. Love doesn't do what you did. I wanted to argue, to tell her that it wasn't that simple. But maybe it was. Maybe I had just fucked it all up beyond repair. She turned toward the door, grabbing her bag off the counter. Lisa, please. She stopped, hand on the doorknob, and looked at me one last time. You know what the worst part is? I would have forgiven you. If you had just told me the truth, if you had just been honest, maybe we could have figured something out. But you couldn't even do that. She opened the door, and then she was gone. I stood there in the silence, staring at the empty space where she had been, and it hit me like a freight train. I had already lost her. I just hadn't realized it until now. 3 days. That's how long it had been since Lisa walked out. The apartment felt hollow without her. I barely left the couch, barely ate, barely slept. Every room smelled like her. Every little thing reminded me of the life I'd just thrown away. And then Emily showed up. The knock on the door came late, too late for it to be anything good. I knew before I even opened it. Emily leaned against the doorframe, smirking like she already knew exactly how fucked up I was. Hey, Jake. I just stared at her. What the hell are you doing here? She raised an eyebrow. Come on. You really think I wouldn't find out? I swallowed hard. Of course she knew. Of course she knew Lisa was gone. Emily had a way of knowing everything. Congratulations, I muttered. You got what you wanted. She laughed, stepping inside like she owned the place. Oh, Jake. You really think this was about getting Lisa out of the way? I shut the door, running a hand through my hair. Wasn't it? You kept pushing, kept showing up, kept pulling me back in. I didn't force you to do anything, she cut in smoothly. You made your own choices. And now? Well, now you get to live with them. Her words hit harder than I wanted to admit. She wandered through the apartment, dragging her fingers along the back of the couch, the counter, the empty dining table. So what's next? You gonna drown yourself in whiskey? Pretend you regret it all? Or are you finally ready to stop lying to yourself? I clenched my jaw. What do you want, Emily? She turned to face me, arms crossed. I want you to admit it. Admit that you never really loved her. Admit that you and we were always going to end up here. I let out a bitter laugh. You want me to say that so you can feel better about yourself? No, she said, stepping closer. I want you to say it because it's the truth. Her eyes searched mine, waiting, and for a second, I almost said it. Almost gave in to the gravity that had always pulled us together. But then I saw Lisa's face in my mind, saw the way she looked at me that last night, the hurt, the betrayal. And I realized something. Emily wasn't here for love. She was here to make sure I stayed broken. I took a step back. You should go. Something flickered in her eyes, but she covered it with a smirk. Suit yourself, Jake. But we both know you'll call me. She walked to the door, pausing just long enough to glance over her shoulder. And when you do, don't pretend you're sorry. The door clicked shut behind her, and for the first time in 3 days, I realized just how deep I'd buried myself, and how much further I could still fall. I thought I knew what regret felt like. Turns out, I had no fucking clue. 3 nights after Lisa left, I found myself staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep, my mind playing the same reel over and over. The fight, the texts, the moment she walked away. But there was something else too, something darker, something I had buried deep and refused to look at. Until now, I grabbed my phone and scrolled through my old messages with Emily, searching for the ones I knew were there. The ones Lisa had seen but never mentioned. And there it was. Emily had texted me first. You really think she'll ever find out? I had replied without hesitation. No. She trusts me too much. Emily's next message came fast. You always did know how to play people. And my final response? The one that sealed everything? And you always knew how to keep a secret. I felt sick. Not just because of what I had done to Lisa, but because of what this really meant. Lisa wasn't just angry when she left. She was scared. I sat up, heart pounding. The night Lisa left, she had looked at me like I was someone else. Not just a liar. Not just a cheater. Like a stranger. I remembered the way her hands had trembled, the way she had taken slow steps back like I might do something, like she was afraid of what I was capable of. And the worst part? I couldn't blame her, because there were things I hadn't told her. Things about Emily. The first time Emily and I had been together, it hadn't been the perfect, passionate love story she liked to pretend it was. It had been reckless, dangerous, manipulative. Emily had a way of getting inside my head, making me do things I never thought I would. She pushed, she tested, and I let her. Because back then, I had thought she was the only one who really saw me. And now, years later, she still did. That's why she came back. Not for love, not even for control, for revenge. Lisa had figured it out before I did. She had seen something in me I hadn't been willing to see in myself. And that's why she left. Not because I cheated, not because I lied, but because deep down, she knew that Emily wasn't the only dangerous one. Maybe I was too. I exhaled slowly, my hands shaking. I wanted to believe I was still the same guy Lisa had fallen in love with, the guy who made her laugh, who held her close when the world felt too big. But now, staring at those messages, feeling the weight of what I had done, I wasn't so sure anymore. Because the truth was, I had spent so much time lying to everyone else. I didn't know if there was anything left of me that was real. And that was the most terrifying part of all. You think you know someone. But sometimes, even you don't know yourself.